A lot of questions yet to be answered, and a lot of people, an entire country, looking for those answers after the indictment yesterday of former President Donald Trump. So we're going to talk about that and break down where we may go from here in the coming days with Jon Taylor. He is the chair of political science and geography at UTSA, a political analyst that we lean on quite often in this KSAT Q&A. So thanks for being here. First things first, this indictment comes down yesterday. It's the first of what could be more. An interesting set of charges, but we don't know the specifics. So your reaction to what happened yesterday?
My reaction was, why did it have to happen right before 5 o'clock when I'm leaving work? But we won't go on that part.
Us too, Jon.
Yeah.
My reaction was, I'm not totally surprised, but at the same time, a little surprised, because there were kind of rumors yesterday saying, well, maybe they're not going to indict, and saying something about going off for a month and such like that. Boom, they indict it. The real question is, what are we going to hear in these charges? Now, officially, Trump won't be told the charges until Tuesday when he's arraigned. And then we'll discover whether or not it's misdemeanor offenses or a combination of misdemeanor and felony offenses. There's suggestions that are out there that, based on some of the people that Bragg, the district attorney, brought back, specifically Karen McDougal, who also apparently got paid off, as well as the publisher of the National Enquirer, there might be a greater number of issues here that are actually felony offenses because they relate to conspiracy and covering up a crime, which is part of what happens in New York. New York actually has a law where you do this for one person, it's actually a misdemeanor offense. Do it for more, and you're engaged in some sort of behind the scenes hide a crime, that ends up being a felony.
Because that's the thing, Jon. I mean, CNN is reporting there are more than 30 counts in this indictment. And so that's much more than one payment made to, a former porn star. I mean, there's got to be some business charges that are involved in this whole thing. Like you said, it could be some sort of, organized effort maybe that they're going to allege. I mean, there are a lot of things out there. Politically, what does this mean for Donald Trump?
Right now, it means nothing, to be perfectly honest, other than it'll rally his supporters, which we've seen already. In fact, I've seen lots of social media discussions among Trump supporters about rallying, about having protests, about going to New York and all this. Congresswoman Green, for example, said she's going to be in New York with her MAGA hat and such. Let's see if that actually happens. But it is interesting because, Trump, I think, kind of knew that something might or might not come down. And he railed against the district attorney. He railed against George Soros. He railed against all enemies of his perceived enemies at Waco last Saturday.
Yeah, you talk about that rally. I mean, this was just days before this indictment. So looking back at that, rewinding a little bit, I mean, what did that rally, just the enthusiasm and how it went, what did that signal to you for his support?
It's kind of fascinating because the enthusiasm was there, but the crowds were not as big as you've seen at other rallies of his. So is it possible that perhaps we're seeing a little bit of petering off? People are maybe moving to other candidates or potential candidates, that perhaps they're concerned that Trump and the Trump brand is a little bit toxic to the point it might hurt Republicans in 2024. And so it is possible that while you have Trump supporters out there, people might also be thinking about, no, we actually want to win the White House again. And
that's my question, is there are tea leaves out there that we need to pay attention to. One is Ron DeSantis hasn't announced yet. I think it's a foregone conclusion he's going to announce. But there are other people out there who have been, for lack of a better word, kind of in a holding pattern, kind of seeing the landscape play out. And I think one of those is Texas Governor Greg Abbott. So it's going to be interesting over the next few months, and if more indictments come down and when we learn more of what's in this indictment, to kind of see how those politicians react to the whole thing.
It is. It's quite fascinating because while people like DeSantis and Abbott, of course, are complaining and claiming it's a witch hunt and all this, at the same time, if they're really thinking about president, they're also thinking, this is a golden opportunity if Trump is out of the way for me to actually win the nomination in 24.
Yeah, and that's what I find interesting. I mean, it kind of depends on who you ask based on the coverage we've seen so far, what yesterday does for Trump politically. But the other Republican contenders in the race, or the ones like DeSantis, like Steve said, who might as well be in the race, they just haven't made it official yet. What do they do here? Because it's an opportunity to, maybe get a leg up on your opponent, but at the same time, you need that base as well.
Yeah, DeSantis is an example of this, where I think he made an unforced error, claiming immediately, after Trump was indicted, that I'm not going to allow Trump to be extradited from Florida. Conveniently forgetting, for a guy that graduated from Harvard Law, Article 4 of the U.S. Constitution, where every state is compelled to extradite to another state, other than really extenuating circumstances, which, by the way, end up in constitutional crisis situations in the Supreme Court. So DeSantis was basically playing politics there. Greg Abbott, for his part, basically, he made a statement about how it's a witch hunt. It's an egregious, attempt at a power grab and all the stuff like that. But he didn't do much more. Now, Ted Cruz did a lot more, but Ted Cruz is not running for president in 24.
Right. Here's the interesting part, though. You want to talk about politicians that are trying to thread the needle and taking on Trump, but not being too aggressive towards him. If you're Mike Pence right now, you could be involved in some of these very indictments and some of these cases against Donald Trump. I mean, you want to talk about threading a needle. This is a guy who really wants to know what's in these indictments and the possible indictments to come.
Exactly. And he could turn around and say, look, I worked with Donald Trump. I supported the Trump policies. I'm as much as MAGA as he is, but I'm not tainted by scandal. I can carry forward our ideas of make America great again. It's quite possible. We think of Pence as somebody who's not going to win the nomination, somebody who's kind of viewed as kind of an afterthought. You wait in the wings long enough, you never know.
Interesting.
Isn't that American politics? You never know.
Absolutely it is.
So we'll see what happens, especially in the coming days, as we learn more about these charges. Jon Taylor, thanks as always for being here.
Pleasure.
Thank you, John. Have a great weekend. We'll be right back.